Hi, my name is Jan. I'm founder and CEO of NitroKey, and this time I'm going to present the NetHSM hardware security module, HSM. So this is a product we have been working on for several years and released it last year. Now, I don't want to have this as a pure sales pitch, but more also covering the technical side, which is quite interesting because of this novel software architecture here. But let me start with explaining what this HSM, the NetHSM, can do. So it's a hardware security module, as I said. This essentially means it's a dedicated server with specific features, similarly like a smart card, but of course with more capabilities, with network interface, etc., to store and use cryptographic keys. So typical use cases are, for instance, essentially arbitrary cryptographic operations. But examples are if you set up your public key infrastructure, running a certificate of authority, whether it's internal or external, or doing some blockchain business, then you typically want to securely store your cryptographic keys, and you usually do this in something like a HSM. You can also use it for, as I said, arbitrary cryptographic operations like TLS connections of any web server, and in this case, having the web server's keys, the TLS keys, securely stored here separately in the HSM. DNSSEC is another example where the HSM is used. And of course, in this case, it's a fully open source device. Hardware-wise, we use off-the-shelf hardware now. It's a version 2 hardware, which contains this MSI Z790P board. And software-wise, it's a little bit special. As you can assume, since I'm here in the room, is that we start with a Coreboot firmware. This time it's not a Dasharo release, but it's a very dedicated Coreboot configuration here to this device. And on top of this, let me scroll to the right point here. Here a few text marks, which you can see meanwhile. So on top of the firmware, we start a formally verified microkernel, Muen. Muen is a kernel not very popular, so I assume most of you haven't heard about this. So it's a very dedicated thing written in an ADA-like language. And this microkernel is also kept very minimal and does essentially nothing else than separating so-called subjects. These subjects, you can imagine these subjects of kind of virtual machines, but in a very static way. So there's on purpose no dynamic behavior, and all the resources are assigned or at compile time to these different subjects. The purpose, of course, is here security, so that there is minimal room for some side channel attacks between these subjects. And we use this subject mechanism to have, for instance, one subject purely running the Ethernet driver, because this one is written in C and potentially unsafe. And then the traffic is virtually redirected from this subject to another subject, then essentially where we have the application logic running in a separate subject. And this application logic, again, is written on a framework called Muen, which calls the unikernel framework. The purpose here is to build an application without any additional overhead, but think of it more as an embedded system where you focus on the minimum and only on the parts you need. And with Muen, you can create those systems so that only the minimal set of libraries you require for your applications are compiled into this unikernel.
MirageOS, you mean, not
oh, sorry,
you're always
MirageOS.
saying Muen.
Yeah, MirageOS. Here we go. And these subjects I mentioned are examples, so there are a couple of more subjects, but I think you got the idea of this separation kernel and having these different subjects separated. And then, of course, it's all open source, so you can look at the details at GitHub. So we welcome the first contributions here. There are not much software contributions yet. We have usual ciphers supported. Also, the list here of ciphers is getting increased with the next planned software release. And to give you an impression of the overhead we have here on the software side, I think the last time I looked at the binary, it's roughly about 50 megabytes of the binary here of the application. So it's far away from a typical Linux system where you have daemons and libraries which you don't know about and don't need, and features here and features there, and therefore also potential attack vectors, which is here, as I said, very limited and focused on the minimum. So, and I think now it's time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan. I'm looking at the chat. I see that Daniel Maslowski climbing. I don't know, Daniel, where you get that, but apparently you know something that potentially Arch Linux considering this as something in package signing infrastructure. So I guess that's Jan potential target for you. Any like maintainers, any open source software foundations which are behind maintaining serious amount of things to sign, because like I just want to also know like what are the potential user workloads that you typically support, and maybe with focus on those which could be interesting to the Sharo community.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Arch Linux is in fact working on a very dedicated signing solution, and this one is based on NetHSM. And you, Piotr, were asking in terms of capacity and performance? Or?
I'm saying more about use cases. Like, okay, so okay. I see that Arch Linux and similar organizations regarding. So, but what's the use case? The use case is essentially mass signing of the packages. That's the point, and the fact that NetHSM can keep with the tempo of signing, or what's the value of NetHSM for Arch Linux, and how this can transition to other, I don't know, other cases. I don't know, maybe like Dasharo is not produced in this mass amount, but I don't know, CubeSys, Debian, I don't know.
Yeah. So first of all, regarding performance, I think we are pretty fast. There were barely any users so far where this performance is not sufficient. Where the NetHSM is then used, other than with Arch or more in general, is where you want to have a central solution which is very capable of storing for long term your cryptographic keys, where you can also apply and configure sophisticated access patterns, like setting up users with different roles. And we have a nice feature of allowing you to structure so-called namespaces where you can dedicate specific users and keys to namespaces next to each other, and the access to these users is then restricted to their particular namespace. So
Makes
it gives
sense.
a lot of flexibility to manage your cryptographic keys, your user, and of course to integrate it to existing systems. Here we have a nice REST API. We also provide a software container which you can freely download and use for development and testing purposes, which is just key for situations like with Arch, where you have a lot of development and needs to test it in a very structured way, and not at the last minute where you want to integrate then a HSM which might feel foreign. But here you get more the modern experience of an API, which you maybe use from using modern, say, cloud-based applications, but from a dedicated hardware.
Okay, what about schemes? Like I want to have scheme. Let's say that there is the Sharo team. I'm producing some release. I have a leader of the validation. I want him to make a sign off, like saying like, okay, it is good. Like we can sign this release or use these keys because like we have keys per release family, let's say, per given platform. Yeah? So he's saying I approve this signature, then maybe some key developer and maybe some like engineering manager saying yes. Or is it like this scheme works with NetHSM? Like you can have this kind of decision-making process for signing?
So you're talking about a multi-step approval process?
Yes.
No, we don't have this yet. So
Okay.
this would be then part of a separate system where you can establish your workflows.
Okay,
Here
that's nice.
we only focus on the essential key storage.
That's nice, and I already see this as a something that could be used also in the Sharo Trust root. So essentially, if we're thinking about the Sharo Trust root, it's essentially like Intel bootguard or any other root of trust provisioning. So essentially, like you have to sign binaries at some point. And then, of course, there is need for secure place for storing. But the problem is that Nitro key token would not work for us because we need way more keys. Like we have a lot of keys. Like yes. I guess with Intel bootguard, you have 3 keys or 2 or 3 keys that are needed to maintain the process. So it's like not 1 key. Yeah. You need more slots. And then if you are a big company and have multiple bootguards for multiple mainboards, then you have to somehow manage that. So I guess you can connect it to CI or you can connect it to some, signing infrastructure for that purpose.
Yes, in general, yes. This is a matter of integration then.
Okay. Yeah, cool, really cool. I think like I hope that like commercial ecosystem of course will see the value in that product, but from our perspective it would be also great that the open ecosystem, and if Arc can recognize NetHSM, I think that sky's the limit, because we know our community as a very, very good high quality community doing very good documentation. Really on the bleeding edge of the open source ecosystem. So congratulations to that. I hope this will happen, and there will be other community which will join you in integrating that. I guess we have 3 minutes, so we can take some other questions.
Have you designed the case yourself for
no,
the NetHSM?
The case we bought off the shelf.
So it's like was already one and just
yes,
tuned up to your needs, like with the
you
branding
like
and stuff. Yeah, I was just like curious whether you have some kind of a good place to procure those, to make some modifications to suit your needs and stuff like that, because the case is often one of the ways which you can like squeeze out the capabilities of the hardware, right? By like exposing those IOs and stuff like that sometimes in a very interesting way, sometimes for security purposes, etc.
Yeah, I guess I guess there is also a question about like smaller version. There is, you have smaller version like for someone who don't need this power or not?
No, we don't. This is the only version. The previous version 1 was similar size, but in a 1 unit height. Now we have 2 unit of height, but there is no other version.
Okay. So this is essentially the only solution. Yeah, I guess it's like the price is also enterprise grade, so I guess it's per inquiry, or do you have publicly placed price somewhere?
Yeah, we didn't publish the price yet, but it's not a secret. So it's almost 10,000 euros per device, and of course we offer some support services on top of it.
Yeah. I imagine this can be like expensive to maintain, and there is quite a lot of responsibility related with making things working. So there is also some need for good quality testing and so on and so on. So what about are there any plans like regarding certification, or how the certification look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we don't have any certification like NIST or common criteria yet. This is something many of our potential customers want. So I think we will look into getting one of these certifications in the future, but we don't have any specific plan yet. Most likely we will target a simpler FIPS certification first, rather than a more complicated common criteria. But this is still something to do.
Yeah, understood.
So in a certain way, we have here an open source device, and this for some people can replace certificates. In my professional experience, these certificates are sometimes helpful, but also to a certain extent meaningless. And this is why I personally am very convinced that open source is not just equal to some certifications, but even better when it comes to general security, so that at least skilled person and companies can ensure how the system has been built, what the potential security flaws here, what is the general quality of the system, ergo what is the likelihood of uncovered issues, etc.
So is there any like a incident response time or incident response like channels, and the way how you will handle potentially like any
we, as part of the support contract, we offer defined SLAs to respond. So we have different levels of contract with different SLA times. If you're interested in this, then send us an email and we provide you the details.
Sure. Like I'm thinking how to employ that, and I really like this product, and like congratulations on building that, because that's what the open source community needs. And I hope that also commercial ecosystem will leverage that heavily, so you can be happy with growing the NitroKey and deliver even more cool projects.
Thank you.